Boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages, it's Jesse with the Common Nerd, bringing you pop culture and all things right through a common sense lens. And Superman is doing pretty well domestically, boys and girls. It's one of those movies. This was something that I was super excited for. I've been excited for basically over a year at this point, especially once the casting was officially announced out there. I mean, the rumor mill I was super excited about. It's one of those situations where I've said this before and I will say it again. I am a DC fanboy. I love Marvel. I love a lot of the characters out there. I love plenty of other franchises, but I grew up with DC. Batman was my first superhero. Superman was one of my first animated series out there. These were my early favorite superhero comics, and they will always end up holding a dear and near deep to my heart. And it's one of them situations where I understand why we were all big fans of Henry Cavill. I mean, honestly, the Superman castings in general, I would say every single time have been absolutely spot on. They just absolutely nailed it. And obviously, a lot of us were very sad when all that stuff happened, but at the end of the day, we knew this was coming, right? Because Warner Brothers is broke, boys and girls. Unless Black Adam ended up making $600 or $700 or $800 million at the box office, there simply was no future for that version of the DCU. And obviously, they lost a whole buttload of money releasing The Flash and Aquaman and obviously Shazam, 2 or 3? And those things just ended up costing Warner Brothers hundreds of millions of dollars. They lost billions of dollars just by having to put those movies out there in the theaters. They were massive flops. It did not do very well. And of course, the announcement that none of it was going to matter anyway, of course, ended up basically securing all of that to be a disastrous dumpster fire. So needless to say, boys and girls, Warner Brothers' expectations are extremely low at this point, especially after all of the hundreds of millions of dollars they lost on Joker 2, which they thought was going to be guaranteed to be a smash hit, and that movie ended up failing miserably. Well, one little bright spot that is going on out there beyond a shadow of a doubt is the Superman domestic box office, because it is absolutely crushing it, boys and girls. Mrs. Common Nerd and I went and saw the movie over the weekend. We went and saw it on Saturday night. We dropped a review just yesterday. If you want to find out what our opinions are and what we thought about the movie out there, I will tell you right now, Mrs. Common Nerd liked it more than I did, but definitely go check out our review that's straight out of the theater. Go check that out and see what you guys think about all of us. But at the end of the day, this is about the box office numbers, because the question is whether or not Superman will actually be profitable. It doesn't really matter whether or not Warner Brothers is happy with it, even if they are, whether or not James Gunn is lying or not. It doesn't matter. Profitability is always the key benchmark to success. And boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, the domestic box office is absolutely crushing it, as you can see over here from thatparkplace.com. Superman holds a strong with a 54% box office drop. Now, this is very much in line with things like the Batman and Guardians of the Galaxy. I think Batman was like a 50% drop, and then Guardians of the Galaxy, James Gunn's last movie, the Guardians of the Galaxy 3, was like a 52% drop or something like that. So it's not as good as a hold as those ones, but it's still a pretty solid opening. But as you can also see here from the headline, although Superman has overtaken Thunderbolts and has nearly surpassed Captain America's full run in 2 weeks, which means if nothing else, boys and girls, whether or not Superman actually ends up being considered legitimately profitable or not, it makes me very happy that it is absolutely stomping a mud hole into Disney, Marvel, and everything Kevin Feige and Bob Iger have done to that. But here's the problem. It's still struggling overseas. And that, at the end of the day, boys and girls, could be very much the nail in the coffin as to whether or not Superman is profitable. Look, I want this movie to succeed. I want it to do well. I want the future of DC to be bright and beautiful, and for all of us to have our most favorite characters out there come to life on the big screen or on television in a proper way that they are represented, that we have all known and loved from the comics. But at the end of the day, profitability is very important, and Warner Brothers is broke. So whether or not Zaslav will consider this a win or not, things are looking rough internationally for Superman. So we're going to check out this article from thatparkplace.com, getting all of the juicy details. And of course, just for giggles, we'll jump over to the numbers and check out how things are going over here as well. But before we do, if you do enjoy our content, hit that like button, share with all your friends, and subscribe or follow if you have not already, boys and girls, because we are grinding, we are growing. We just crossed 2K. We're sailing our way towards 2,100. I think we're at 2,075, and I could not do that without every single one of you. Also, leave us a comment in the section down below. Let us know what you think about all this. Do you think Superman will end up continuing to have legs? What do you think will end up being its final number? Do you think the international box office will ever pick up? Or do you think the international box office is just doomed to fail? What kind of reasons do you think are they? Do you believe it's Warner Brothers, the truth, the Warner Brothers saying that maybe generally Superman doesn't do very well internationally, at least not opening weekend, but obviously Man of Steel and a few other things have proved that differently? Or do you think there's another factor affecting this internationally? Let us know what you think about all that in the comment section down below. And also, if you'd like to support the channel, please check out the links in the description as well. All right, from our dear sweet Marvin Montanaro over at thatparkplace.com. Superman held at the box office with a respectable second weekend drop, but there's still a long way to go for DC's big comeback. In a summer season hungry for superhero spectacles, James Gunn's Superman has proven its mettle, dominating the box office for a second consecutive weekend and crossing the $400 million milestone worldwide. Now, it's one of them situations where, too, obviously we're going to have competition from Marvel's Fantastic Four. All I'm really praying for at this point is that Marvel's Fantastic Four does worse than Superman. And honestly, I think there's a very good possibility that will happen. But we'll find out, because honestly, the predictions for Fantastic Four right now are very in line with what some of the last minute predictions were for Superman, like the $125 to $135 million. But as we've seen from Marvel over the past few years, a lot of time they end up coming in under expectations. So we'll see what happens. So if nothing else, Superman may at least beat Pedro Pascal's Fantastic Four. The DC Studios reboot, starring David Cornsweet as Superman, and earned an estimated $57.25 million domestically in its sophomore frame, a respectable 54% box office drop from its $125 million opening, pushing its North American total to $235 million. And this is something that I saw some people point out on Twitter over the weekend and some other stuff, or over the last week specifically, before the weekend numbers even hit. And one of the things that they really thought was impressive was the daily totals, right? Because that was the other thing about this, is the daily holds weren't bad at all. I mean, look at this during the week. 10 million on Monday, 11 million on a Tuesday, $17 million on a Wednesday, $12 million on a Thursday, $31 million on a, I mean, if that trend holds next week, which it's kind of hard to argue that it really would, that is insane. And I mean, we're talking hopefully it cracks 600 million. We'll see what happens, but I don't know how long this hold can hold out. I don't know how many people are going to keep going back and seeing this movie over and over again, but having numbers like that during the week is absolutely insane. And it just shows you, no matter what the international box office is, there is still a huge draw and a huge market for Superman, at least domestically. Once again, proving why it was a really stupid idea to abandon the whole truth, justice, and the American way thing, because literally Superman's only doing well domestically. Maybe you should have embraced a little bit more of that Americana out there, James Gunn. And no, the movie is not woke, despite what some people are still trying to double down on even after seeing the movie. It's not woke at all. Internationally, the film added $45.2 million across 78 markets, bringing the global cumulative to $406.8 million as of Sunday estimates. And they're kind of expecting, like, this is the official number over here from the numbers. They're still putting it at $400 million with $165 million for the international box office. But that's why the estimates are kind of important for that one, because the international box office doesn't generally report until later in the week. It normally takes a couple of days after the weekend. And honestly, we won't have the official full-blown numbers for the weekend this weekend until later this afternoon. But these estimates generally come in within a few 100,000 because it's really easy to tell when things are actually going on versus making predictions before boots actually hit the ground in a movie out there. This performance not only solidifies as the bright spot in the 2025 box office landscape, but also highlights the enduring appeal of the character, even amid a crowded superhero genre. However, stiff competition is coming up on the horizon from the Marvel's Fantastic Four First Steps, which opens this weekend. The film's second weekend box office drop of 54% is notably milder than those previous DC heavyweights, such as Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice, which had a 69% drop in 2016, and Man of Steel, which had a 65% drop in 2017. This movie also has a much higher audience score than Man of Steel. I haven't checked it and compared it to Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice, but I imagine it's probably very much in a similar vein. The audiences overwhelmingly love this movie, and it hasn't really changed in the last couple of weeks since this movie's out. Verified audience is still sitting at 92%. All audiences at an 89%. So still very, very solid numbers from the audience's crowd, even after all these weeks, despite all the criticisms you've heard online. The general audiences love this movie, which explains those Monday through Thursday weekly numbers. That's just absolutely nuts. Plus, it's summer, so obviously all of that helps out as well. This shows positive audience reception and word of mouth. Obviously, we just talked about that. 85% Rotten Tomatoes score and strong exit polls. Are you guys really quoting the critics score? Like, I guess, maybe, I don't know what, I guess, I don't know why anybody bother with the critics anymore. They don't determine whether or not these movies succeed or fail. Stop quoting their numbers. I don't care what the critics score is for any movie at this point, unless it's abysmally bad and I get to make fun of Marvel or one of the rest of these Hollywood studios about it. Because guess what? Critic scores don't determine box office numbers. They never have, and they never will, especially in the modern era now, where we realize the critics, the official critics, the legacy media critics, those trusted news sources, we can't trust them anymore. So yeah, needless to say, not going over so very well at all. Superman has boosted the overall summer box office by 15.9% compared to the same period in 2024, according to the ComScore data. Warner Brothers executives are reportedly optimistic, viewing the film as a foundational pillar for the revamped DC universe under Gunn's creative stewardship. Yet the story isn't without kryptonite. This is where we get to the international box office. International markets have shown softer enthusiasm, with the second weekend's overseas haul dropping 44%, excluding China, where the film has faced outright rejection. Yeah, they want no part of that. Wow, strange concept that a character based on truth, justice, and the American way doesn't do well in a communist utopia. So yeah, weird concept. I know, strange. Who would have ever guessed it? Who would have ever guessed it? And I'm sure it probably had nothing to do with their social credit system in any way, shape, or form over there. No. That's just a conspiracy theory now, isn't it, boys and girls? The 171.8 million international total represents about 42% of the global gross, atypically low for a share for a superhero tentpole, which often relies on overseas audiences for the bulk of its earnings. Obviously, that's not the case with Superman, and maybe, just maybe, this should teach DC a lesson that maybe they'd lean into more of the American market and not worry so much about the international audience and a diverse representation kind of nonsense out there. Let's see what we got here. Factors like original competition and potential superhero fatigue may be at play, as the film's global trajectory suggests it could stall below the unadjusted $670 million haul of 2013's Man of Steel. So Man of Steel may have done better in the early box office previews, but in the long haul, this movie could end up doing much less. The film's rapid ascent is particularly striking when compared to recent Marvel counterparts. Released on May 2nd, 2025, Thunderbolts Marvel's Assembles anti-hero flick concluded theatrical run at $382.1 million globally. So literally, Superman has already beaten that, and it's about to beat Captain America Brave New World, wrapped at $415.1 million worldwide after a more extended 14 to 15 week run across 4,100 screens. Averaged around 6.5 weeks per theater, and it still barely cracked 415 million worldwide. Yeah, despite its international box office, Superman, just basically essentially a domestic box office, is crushing everything Marvel has put out over the last year, with the exception of Deadpool and Wolverine. I'm sorry, but whether or not it's profitable or not, if I'm David Zaslav and I'm freaking James Gunn, I'm taking a victory lap. I'm going, suck it, Kevin Feige. You can eat my butt. Ha, 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 ha. Doesn't mean it's profitable, but it does mean it's a win, and it wins against Marvel. And I'm good with that. With Superman sitting at 406, just shy of that mark, final weekend actuals could see it overtake the MCU's entry's full earnings in record time, outpacing Brave New World's estimated $250 to $300 million at the 2-week point by a significant margin. Yeah, which obviously it did not do a very good job at. Looking forward, Superman faces headwinds from upcoming releases. Fantastic Four, I don't think it's going to do as much damage as what it is. I really don't think there's a lot of excitability for the Fantastic Four out there. I think there's a lot of promo. I think there's a lot of marketing about the movie. I mean, you can't walk down a grocery store aisle and not see something with Fantastic Four on it practically at this point. You see the stuff all over. And they practically told you the entire movie with all the clips and the trailers and teasers and, commercials that they've released on the thing and everything else. So I really don't think it's going to be, obviously that first opening weekend, it's going to be some stiff competition for Superman. But depending on the drop off, this is just my prediction. Maybe it's just me being hopeful. I think we could see a second weekend drop for Fantastic Four be so abysmally bad that Superman could end up taking the #1 spot domestically at the box office. If that happens, boys and girls, I am going to laugh so hard, and I'm going to have to figure out a way to turn that into as many videos as possible, because I am just going to want to rub Kevin Feige's face in it, his nose in it, just over and over and over again, especially after he admitted that Marvel is going full steam ahead with the diversity, inclusion, and equity nonsense. So yeah, please, for the love of God in heaven, let Superman beat Fantastic Four. That's all. That's what I want from the box office out of July. That's all I want out of the box office from July. Still, the film's success extends beyond the ledger. As a reboot launching Gunn's DC era, Superman may have reignited some fan interest. with merchandise sales and streaming potential poised to bolster its legacy. Its post-lockdown market where superhero films have faced scrutiny, this Kryptonian revival signals the hope and high-flying action can still draw the crowds Marvel has lost. And it's absolutely true. Domestically, this movie has crushed it. It has been just absolutely insane. And you know what? I enjoyed it. You know, I'm not going to give you my full review. I'm not going to give you my full opinion on the movie. I'm not going to give you my full, any of that kind of stuff. Because I want you to go watch my review. I want you to go check it out. Because that also is my wife. That's Mrs. Common Nerd's very first movie review ever. So you definitely want to go check that out and give her some support and let her know that you appreciated her coming out there and giving us a review as well. But it's one of them situations where I would recommend going to see the movie. I would. If you asked me, recommend or not recommend, I'm going to tell you. I recommend the movie. I recommend you going and seeing it. I think it's good. I think it's worth your time. You know, if you can get a matinee, or you know what, I think it'd definitely be worth it in IMAX. My wife and I went and saw it in 40X. And 40X was awesome. It was a great time. It was a great experience. We absolutely loved it. You know, but at the end of the day, the international box office sucks. It really does. And with a reported budget of anywhere between, $200 to $300 million, depending on the reports you hear, depending on marketing and stuff like that, this movie has to crack $600 million to be able to argue to make it a profit. You know, there'll be plenty of people out there in Hollywood that'll argue if it crosses $500 million internationally, it's profitable. We don't blow smoke up your butt like that. At the end of the day, we know the truth is the truth. 2 + 2 still equals 4. God is still on his throne in heaven, and up is still up, and down is still down. And at the end of the day, this movie has to crack $600 million, if not come close to $700 million, to actually be able to consider truly profitable. Does that deny the fact that Kevin Feige is not going to be happy about this when it beats Fantastic Four? But does this negate the fact that, David Zaslav and James Gunn might be really happy with this movie financially because of all the disastrous dumpster fires that they've had over the last few years? Absolutely. That doesn't mean they're lying, but it doesn't mean the movie's going to be profitable either. And at the end of the day, profitability is key to keeping things going for the future. But we know this movie alone was not the deciding factor for the future of DC. But nonetheless, it's had a great domestic box office opening. It's absolutely crushed Marvel, literally basically with nothing more than a domestic box office with what they've had internationally. And that is absolutely insane. So Superman, boys and girls, is clearly a very good domestic draw. Doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be profitable, but at the end of the day, that is a hell of a good showing. And I'm glad to see it. I'm glad to see that so many Superman fans out there are really happy with this movie. I'm glad to see it is absolutely crushing everything Marvel has put out over the last few years at the domestic box office alone, not to mention even with their international numbers put in. This movie is going to embarrass Fantastic Four. This movie has already embarrassed Thunderbolts. This movie has already embarrassed Captain America, Brave New World in just 2 weeks. Boys and girls, just 2 weeks. Why do we think anything's going to be different with Fantastic Four? Needless to say, boys and girls, Superman is crushing it at the domestic box office. It may not end up being financially profitable, but it's sure as hell going to beat Marvel, and that's going to make Kevin Feige very upset. And ladies and gentlemen, that I am absolutely here for, because so many of these monsters in Hollywood have danced with the devil, and now they are getting burned. And guess what? A hopeful, optimistic, not woke Superman still sells at a domestic box office. And boys and girls, I think that bodes very, very well for the future of DC. And I, for one, cannot wait to see what else we get from the future, because guess what? Domestically, Superman has crushed it. And at the end of the day, that really should be the most important part. After all, he is an American hero. Truth, justice, and the American way, after all.